Awesome. So first off, thanks, Camille, for jumping all over this and working on very short order, looking for ways to pull some of the data. So thank you.
I'm actually working on this feature flags story for some time, and like if you look at this epic that I linked, there is like a lot of different type of the usages, and like they are not very aligned. So I'm kind of like slowly, iteratively going through all these different discrepancies and trying like to address them. But I also like try to gather some data. So I have my merge request that tries to like do a strong validation of the feature flag usage, and I had like the data points. I could like recover data points from 2 times in the June and like today. So we cannot really compare like 13.0 and 13.1, but we can compare like let's say like just before 13.1 and at the time of the 13.1 and 13.2 to have like
I think that's great.
some idea about like how much is being added, how much is being changed, and like how much is like being disabled, because there is like a plenty of the feature flags that are disabled. If you maybe get into like some description of mine and Epic, I try to categorize a lot of these feature flags into types that represent the different life cycle of the feature flags, because like we have a lot of different usages that we use feature flags for, and only some part of them is really like for the development purposes, but there is also like other types if you look at my descriptions that I put.
And Camille, actually, the spreadsheet is it looks like you have it. You haven't opened up the permissions file of GitLab, so if you could do that, that'd be great.
Sorry, can you say again?
The spreadsheet, I tried to open it and I don't have permissions. So maybe it'd be good to add permissions to open it up to everybody at GitLab.
Yes, I was not sure if it's like being shared, but let me fix that.
Thank you. I know you just created it just a couple minutes before the meeting. Hey, Darby.
Okay, it should be updated now.
Okay, great. Hi, Michelle. So, yeah, and thanks again, Camille, for putting this together. Let's see, spreadsheet's opening here.
So if you have any questions about like numbers, I think I can quickly answer you about numbers in any configuration that you may have the questions for, like how many were added, how many was removed, how many was changed between different states. So
I guess where we started is how many total did we have on the 2 different dates? Why don't we start there? Total number of feature flags.
Let me share my screen. It's gonna be much easier.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, for some reason the Google Docs is not participating with me, letting me open this spreadsheet.
I'm not sure. Maybe like the link is broken, so I'm gonna just.
Okay. Or it might just be a problem on my side.
Okay, so try to enter that. I definitely changed the sharing permissions. Anyone at GitLab? So you look at the date today, how many feature flags we have, or like. So if we talk about the today, we have. I'm having trouble. Like 560 different feature flags for 3 different categories, and the categories are development, licensed, and ops. Like the description of the categories is like in the in this link on this comment of mine. I'm not sure if anyone has access to this exact comment where I could share that. I'm gonna share that on the chat. It's a link to my note on the www.gitlab.com, so you could as well follow the different names. So we had 560 different feature flags for 3 different categories. If we talk about feature flags that are considered like development. So technically, like for the type of the for something like a feature rollout, we have 309 of different feature flags in this current release.
And does false and true mean whether it's defaulting on, or is that just the setting of it and you have to actually go look at code to figure it out?
No, like false true indicates their default state if it's not overwritten by the feature flag engine. So, so you could consider false true to be like the whether it's enabled or disabled for the generic on-premise install.
Got it. Okay.
And if there's no entry there for that date, it means the feature flag didn't exist on that date. Is that accurate?
Like, yes, like minus indicates that like it was added recently or it's no longer existing in the code base compared to the prior date. It's even more tricky because some of the feature flags are ambiguous. They have false and true at the same time, so they have some kind of superposition type of the usage. And the reason for having this superposition type of the usage is also commented in the second link of mine on this comment, if you are interested why.
This is great. This is great info.
Camille, is it okay if I create a pivot table off of this to just get some numbers so you don't have to work it?
Sure, like do it whatever you want to do it with that. You can create another sheet on this one, so we would have the raw data somewhere else.
Yeah, that's the idea, is just basically create a pivot table on another sheet. So thanks, appreciate it. This is awesome information.
So if you are interested about like how many new were added compared like for the 1 month ago, it's, I mean, I may be missing some of them yet, but approval rule, it seems that all of that got added recently, and we added 44 feature flags in the last milestone. If this is interesting, and how many we removed. Let's check. We removed 28 feature flags in the last milestone.
That's actually pretty good.
And I'm actually talking only about the development type. Like licensed are by definition kind of, actually we removed some licensed features. We removed pre-licensed features. So like we removed from the mapping between different plans these 3 different checks. Maybe like we migrated them to the core, GitLab core. So maybe this would be the one reasons why we remove them, because there is no really other reason for removing them. I can really answer any questions, so I just don't know what else to answer you.
I think this gives the data we need to do the trend analysis, which is great.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to think about at a high level is originally going into this, the concern was do we have things going default by on? The fact that we have 500 in flight feels a little bit high, but in general, if we're closing them out, it feels like we are getting there. It's just, it takes time associated with it.
Not really. I guess like from my perspective, from what I saw, like the feature flag life cycle is like, it's kind of free fall process. It's not really like that we actively work on removing feature flags. Like we, some time ago, I also did analysis of how many feature flags are configured on gitlab.com, but they are no longer present in the code base. And there was like pretty high number. I found like at least a few discrepancies between the configuration. So like the tricky part about our feature flags usage, which is maybe the most tricky part, like we test A. On premise, we run B. On staging, we run C. On QA, we run D. And on GitLab.com, we run E, because these states, they are distinct in a number of cases, because people test the feature flags. They enable, disable them. Sometimes they don't remove them. They change the code base. For example, today, when I was preparing this analysis today, I found 6 ambiguous usages of the feature flags, which was basically like someone not changing in all places whether the state is false or true. I kind of reached to these people and they kind of started correcting them. But like, it's like pretty unstructured as for the whole life cycle. Like, it's like fully free fall kind of model. Like, there is no really like a strong, let's say, indication like when you should remove the feature flags. We only describe you should ship your code behind the feature flag, no matter how small it is. It would be ideal if it's disabled by default, so you could really roll out that. As soon as you validated that, it should be on by default. And then we say you should remove the feature flag as soon as like the feature is shipped and like you are confident. But like number of times, like when I was looking at the lifecycle of these feature flags, it's like we just simply forgot about them, basically. That we had these feature flags, we move on to other topics, and like we didn't really like treat the development type of the feature flags as a like technical debt that you should get rid of as soon as possible. And this was kind of my impression, like trying to untangle like the feature flags that I'm trying to do. Like, it's a little all over the place. We kind of have trouble on ensuring the consistency. We test something completely different that we ship. On GitLab.com, we run something different that we give to our on-prem. We sometimes forget to remove them and things like that. This is like my impression from like starting untangling this internal usage of our feature flags.
Do you think we should? Do you think we should improve it, or do you think it's even though it's like the way you just described it, it's unmanaged? And the question always is, whenever we're looking at these, is do we start managing it, which takes time and resources, time and people's energy. Actually, I should not say resource, but time and people's energy. Or do you view it as kind of, unmanaged? It's a little bit chaotic, but it's not a untenable problem at this point. What's your kind of assessment?
I think we should manage the feature flag. There is a few reasons for that, like understanding of like what version, like the simple question that like I received like 2 days ago, like 3 days ago, what was different feature flags across different versions? This is like the simple question, and I'm going from the perspective of our customer that they may want to understand what was new added and what was changed that may affect them. And it's like this kind of managed structure is useful for the PM or engineering manager to understand what the feature flags their team still has. Useful for the support team to understand what the change between different versions and what was changed, like, and on like for our SRE team to understand what is different between staging, QA, and production environment. And like for the developer, I think like the current state makes it really harder for developers to understand like how their feature flag is being rolled out. So making this slightly more like managed and moving these responsibilities to other people would make it actually, I think, simpler to the people using the feature flag, because they would have like very simple workflow, like just create this like definition. We're just gonna generate all like these graphs data for you, like with the comprehensive table between different releases. Every PM engineering manager they will know exactly what is in the release and how it's configured, and how it's configured differently to what we run on GitLab.com. So I think like we are over the scale of unmanaged. Like given that we add like 50 new feature flags every month, and I didn't even check like how many we change. It's really hard to keep track how it's kind of like moving on. I mean, like also from the different perspective, like it's my perception is healthy to keep as little of the feature flags as possible. Like if we have too many feature flags, it's really hard to ensure like the stability of the code base. So I mean, maybe like managed way would make it actually much easier for all people using that, because like maybe one worry like people that have is like I'm not gonna add the feature flag because it's so much toil. I have to then create many merge requests to do it, change it like over. Maybe it's gonna make it easier, or maybe other way around. I don't really know. I'm trying to figure out like the minimal steps and like understand if people like it or not. If they don't like it, like it's easy to revert. We're gonna go back to unmanaged and how it looks today.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is there's a couple different ideas we could do. One is an example is we could actually have the triage package basically notify potentially managers. So it'd be interesting to figure out how we actually map this to managers, notify managers of what needs to be cleaned up. So then we can basically get some time devoted to those activities. Another one is for anything that's currently off, that's been off for a long time, is basically notify them about it as well. And like, I want to disperse the problem. I don't want this to be Camille's problem. To be very clear on this point, because it's really the management team and getting other.
No, I mean like I'm taking like the approach. I'm just like building the infrastructure for making better describe, but I don't really want to manage the feature.
Yeah, you just should not manage the thing. Let's be clear, you should not manage it. What I'm more trying to figure out is what's the right, like if you have any recommendations on how we should manage it or what the right approach is from that perspective.
Like my approach today is really like make it explicit. And like we make it explicit, then it's gonna be much easier to figure out how it moves and adapt to that. Because like right now, if you look at the comment in this issue, like one of the problems on finding feature flags, like for example, feature flags name are created from the code. It's not that like you have a string in the code that you can easily grab and find. So, like there is a number of the feature flags that are like implicit based on like other features. So I'm kind of like thinking that if we make this explicit, have like separate space where we store all these names, it's not gonna be a big toil to the developer. It's gonna be similar to creating a changelog entry. But from our perspective, it's gonna be super simple, like to create this table from any point at time, because like you only get like this space and you compare this space against other space. So it's also gonna be pretty simple to get like a graph how many feature flags we added, removed, like by the quantity, or like how many are, what state they have, because the type, the usage, the default state would be described like with the simple YAML that you can consume in any way. And one idea that I had as part of the epic, if we have this simple YAML description, we could create a very nice comprehensive doc.gitlab.com extension where you could be able to see like last 3 or 4 releases, the feature flags names with the links, with a label of the group that is like that introduced that feature flag, and how this state changed over time for different releases. So I mean, I'm not gonna be able like to get to the doc.gitlab.com, but my current plan is like to update our procedures to kind of have the changelog type workflow. You just, if you want to add a new feature flag, you just create this feature flag definition, and then the magic happens. If you change the state of the feature flag, you just update this feature flag definition, and then we're gonna really figure out how we want to consume that definition. It still allows all the flexibility that we have of the feature flag. So from the development perspective, it doesn't change how you use. It only really requires you to create the feature flag explicitly. So it's documented. So your YAML is really like documentation, and part of the kind of this YAML definition is like, ideally, I think it would be great if people would provide in this YAML a merge request that introduces that feature flag, and like and on the other side, they would create like some templated issue, filling some initial details about the feature flag. So then it could be scheduled using some our regular issue board. And kind of this is how you then, if you then would go to doc.gitlab.com, we would have like a list of the feature flags, their state, the group that created the feature flag, a link to the merge request, and link to maybe issue discussing rollout and the lifecycle of that feature flag. I mean, this is kind of like my design that I'm kind of working through right now. It's pretty much documented as part of that epic. If you, Christopher or Wayne or Darby, you want more details on how it's gonna look.
What do you think the time frame is? I know that you've been working on it. I just didn't know what the time frame is, Camille. Are you thinking this is 2 releases out, or?
I really want to finish this milestone, like this procedure. Like I've been doing that for around 1.5 or 2 milestones so far, like going through different random improvements in the code base. But I want to close out my part in this milestone, and I want to close out the issues that are have the current milestone that are assigned to me, and all other that are part of the backlog. I consider them to be nice to have and like future improvements, but they don't really change the fundamental mechanics behind the process. So I just generated a table from basically from the work that I'm doing right now. I just need to somehow at some point put all these definitions without like putting a lot of details about them into code base. So I have like one of my merge requests has this magic function that it persists the feature flags as it's used. So this is what actually I used today to do it. I'm just kind of like constantly rebasing that merge request to ensure that there is no surprises.
To pull the data for a different date in the past, how much work is that, Camille? Is that an hour's worth of work or much longer than that?
To update like the current data point?
No, let's say we wanted to get the data for January so we can see, you know, a longer term trend. We chose a particular day in January. Would that be a lot of work or
yes.
not a lot of work?
Yes.
It would be. Okay. Then I don't even want to consider it then.
So to update the data from today, I had to spend about 2 or 3 hours and like have like 4 or 5 different iterations on the pipeline to ensure that I fix the ambiguous usage of the feature flags and have the pipeline green.
Okay.
And it's given the fact that like a number of my changes are already merged in the master. So to have like the data point before June, I would have to like port a number of my changes.
And and not worth it. Cool. Well, Christopher, do you have what you need for the overall trend analysis?
Yeah, I think this gives me an overall trend and also gives me a little bit of a story. I think the main thing, Wayne, you and I need to think about is once Camille gets this centralized as kind of next steps, and you know maybe how we either engage Kyle or think about it from a management perspective. Darby, I saw you put in a note there too about what looks like Cheryl trying to work on guidance. We probably should make sure that we're syncing with what Camille's work is, just to make sure that we've got a consistent story on that front.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out that CI is starting to use that rollout template, and so we could tie that in with what Camille's talking about as a way to, it's probably a way to programmatically do this, but regardless of automation, like just tie it together so that so that we don't lose track of the cleanup work that needs to be done, once a feature is shipped and like in production.
So I'm kind of like I know I'm aware of this template, and like as part of like the creation process of the feature flag, I make it a little easier to use the template. But really, like we have so many different approaches how we could approach like this, creating this feature flag description. Like it could be even like Danger creating that for you. When you create a merge request and system discovers that a new feature flag is created, like I don't really sure exactly like how strict we wanna be about like treating feature flags as a technical debt, but it's not really like my decision to make. So I'm kind of like making this like super flexible process. Like let's make it like decide like if you don't want to create issue, it's fine. Like word not gonna break. It's like just give us some hint about like who created and when. I mean, not individual, but rather like the group that owning the feature flag is. So the current process is not strict really. Like the strict part only is that you need to always create some definition. This definition may be half full, but like my perception was that like when I merge like these blank definitions, just having the name, this would be the time that I would like spread the octopus to all the people, all of the teams. Please fill these details about these feature flags if you are the owner of them, to have actually some initial understanding how many feature flags each group has, and like do we have some issues, merge requests for them, or do we need to schedule like the removal? But like I don't really like yet create this. I don't really want to go into making this process strict, rather like small improvement to what we have today to make it explicit, but then really figure out exactly how strict we want to be about the feature flags usage. Because one aspect really that I don't want to lose is like feature flag is to help, so it should be super simple for you to use the feature flag. So I don't want like my changes to the process to be a toy that people would decide to not use feature flags in the first place, because this is not the intent. The intent is really like to make everyone around to be better aware how to use the feature flags. So I'm not really like, exactly sure how to find this like the balance between removal and flexibility, but this is like the implementation detail to figure out next when we better understand how many and for how long we have historically.
And we can adjust the wording as we get some history, but I think starting from what we have now and going forward will give us enough visibility in a few months that we can help with that from that perspective. Cool. To your point, I don't want to make it too onerous. If it becomes onerous, then that becomes problematic in and of itself. So we don't want to slow development down. Cool. Thanks for the hard work, Camille. Appreciate it.
Awesome. I'll post the recording to the issue, link to it for the issue. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.